Welcome to our September TAKDÍR Dialogos, and I am so thrilled and privileged to have my friend, teacher, and comrade Lucille Greeff here to share with us about working with the Enneagram in pairs and to give us a little taster of the new Enneagram PAIRS reports that Aephoria has created. So, Lucille, let me hand over to you to introduce yourself before I even position how the session works and what we're going to be covering.
Thanks so much, Ingrid. And it's so lovely to be with you. I love the idea of being comrades and co-conspirators in some kind of way. So my name is Lucille Greeff. I'm part of Aephoria. And what we are really passionate about at Aephoria is to create a world where we can live and work together at a higher frequency and to bring more love into the world. And it's from that space that we've created our new colleagues and couples reports that we're super excited about. And yeah, I've been working with the Enneagram for about 20 years. And in this time, I've had a full cycle of love affair with the Enneagram. At this point in time, where the Enneagram is incredibly popular and everywhere, one of the things that's really important to me is that we work ethically with the Enneagram and we can distinguish between teachers that are bringing really quality teaching from an ethical place and more like fly-by-night Enneagram teaching. So I know, Ingrid, you're an accredited IA school. We are at Aephoria as well. And so I serve on the IA board in the accreditations committee. And so for people that are watching this and that are part of this session today, please consider becoming an accredited training professional if you want to stand with the IA ethics. So that's a little plug just up front. And a little bit more just maybe about Aephoria, if anyone wants to contact us and check out what we've done. If you're watching this video, you've got an invitation to make use of a free couples or colleagues report, so you can follow the link that's available there. And my details is there as well as the website, euphoriagroup.com. And when I'm not busy with the Enneagram and training coaches and therapists and using the Enneagram, part of what I do is to take people onto the land for vision quests and other rites of passage work. We've got a crazy program called Enneagram on the Land as well. And that's something that's really dear to my heart. So maybe I'll stop there. That's a little bit more about me. Let's get going.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Lucille. And those Enneagram on the Land and Enneagram Informed Vision Quest, I highly recommend that you join Lucille for those programs. And actually for all Euphoria's training, it's brilliant and so rich and deep. And this is, as I said, a Dialogos session about the Enneagram and pairs. Can you see my screen?
No, it only says pairs final, saved to my Mac, and a little line in black. Sorry, you're going to have to cut that bit again. Now it's there.
Right, so as I said, a Dialogos session, the Enneagram in pairs, and what do we mean by Dialogos? And that is a shared practice of making meaning together. Dia means through, and logos is our human capacity for reasoning, and in Greek it also means the word in quite a broad sense. So these sessions are about communal discernment, companionship, and a sense that really truth discloses itself relationally. So it's not about a one-way broadcast of information. We're going to be having a conversation. And in the space we create in Dialogos, it's about real mutuality, presence, and an openness to disclosure. So there's no attachment in the space to knowing everything or being right. And anybody who comes to these sessions, we really appreciate your background, your history, your professional expertise, and your personal life insights and how valuable that is in creating shared understanding together. And I'm really of a very strong belief that we teach each other the Enneagram, that every human being is an Enneagram teacher, because we're all walking around from within our type, and those are the struggles we have. So anybody who wants to join these sessions can connect with me on Substack, and I post the recordings on my YouTube channel, which you see at the bottom there. And in terms of my own bio, I can just go there quickly. I'm also got an IES, Enneagram School, accredited training provider. I have a long corporate background. I was head of learning and development and leadership development in one of South Africa's big 4 banks for a long time, and I was head of transformation and sustainability before then. And subsequently, I've been coaching and training coaches, therapists, spiritual directors, and NPO directors, anybody who wants to work with the Enneagram in the trauma-informed use of the Enneagram. And my interests are very transdisciplinary. I bring cognitive science, interpersonal neurobiology, and comparative religion and mysticism together in my Enneagram work. So for those of you who don't know me, that is who I am. So let's start with what today is about. And you might get a little bit of a weird continuity surprise because we're recording this subsequent to the rest of the session that you'll see from after the initial video. So don't be surprised if we change outfits and time of day. It's just how magical we are. So we're going to be talking about relationship derailers, and the Gottman Institute gives some generic ones. But what the Enneagram's brilliance is that it makes it so refined and type specific. How do we each do these derailers? And there are at very least 27 different ways. And then we're going to talk about how the Enneagram helps us work with relationship patterns, and which Enneagram features or variables or enneagons are most helpful in bringing the Enneagram to relationships. So we go into the harmonics and the instincts a bit. And then Lucille's going to take us through the new Aephoria PAIRS Reports and help us understand what are the aspects of those reports that make them really ethical, user-friendly, and really set people up for the kinds of conversations that are going to take their relationships to new places. And along the way, we're going to be doing some trauma-informed process considerations about the nervous system in couples work, shame. And so I hope you're going to have a lovely time with us. So the first place we're going to start is with the derailers. So in my training in Imago, we learned about these Gottman Institute relationship patterns and derailers. And I want to show you a little video about them. It's a very short video, but I invite you, when you're listening to this video, watching this video, to notice your nervous system experience in watching it. Notice what happens in your awareness, your body, your heart, and what emotions arise for you. So just invite you, take a body snapshot now. Notice how you are. And I'm going to play the video and see how that affects us.
You're so selfish.
Ugh, what an idiot.
It's not my fault we're always late.
Forget it.
Criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. Dr. John Gottman calls these negative communication patterns the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse because they'll lead to the end of your relationship. In fact, He can predict this relationship failure with over 90% accuracy if the behavior isn't changed. So, what can you do? Well, at the Gottman Institute, we understand you might not even know you're communicating this way, or you might not know how to control it. But if you practice the following 4 research-based antidotes, there is hope for your future. Criticism attacks the character of the recipient, instead of focusing on a specific behavior. The antidote to criticism is to talk about your feelings using I statements, then express a positive need. Contempt is an expression of superiority that comes out as sarcasm, cynicism, name-calling, eye-rolling, sneering, mockery, and hostile humor. Contempt is the greatest predictor of relationship failure and must be eliminated. The antidote to contempt is to treat one another with respect and build a culture of appreciation within the relationship. Defensiveness is self-protection through righteous indignation or playing the victim. Defensiveness never solves the problem and is really just an underhanded way of blaming your partner. The antidote to defensiveness is to accept responsibility, even if only for part of the conflict. Stonewalling occurs when the listener withdraws from the conversation without resolving anything. It takes time for the negativity created by the first 3 horsemen to result in stonewalling, but when it does, it can become a habit. The antidote to stonewalling is to break for at least 20 minutes, calm down, then return to the conversation. Spare your relationship from certain destruction. Learn more about eliminating the 4 horsemen by visiting our site.
So we're going to segue to the other piece of the recording, but just before we do that, Lucille, is there anything that arises for you in watching this and anything you'd like to say?
I think one of the things in just connecting with this is to feel how my body is definitely more dysregulated than before we watch this. And there's more anxiety definitely in the body, but then also how quickly it triggers shame. So just going through my own relationship patterns and noticing the ways in which, so I'm a sexual 4, like there's a particular way in which as a sexual 4 I can do stonewalling, which is like first just drop a massive bomb and then leave. It's not just a quiet exit, it's like a really dramatic exit. And just feeling the shame rise inside me for how I can and have hurt other people with that behavior.
And I noticed as well that watching the first bit where they were giving the of the behaviors, I literally couldn't think. I couldn't follow the rest of the video. I couldn't assimilate the rest of the video because I was too stressed. So we're going to end the recording of this piece and I'm going to stitch it together with the next piece. So I hope you enjoy the rest of the session.
Thank you.
So the Gottman Institute was part of my training in Imago relationship counseling, where you coach the actual relationship, you coach the field to establish safety and connection. But what I invite you to do, having watched that, is just to notice the state of your nervous system right now and how watching that video affected you. So just take a moment to come away from the screen and almost notice where that video took you and how it affected maybe your thoughts, your awareness, maybe certain imagery came to mind, maybe your quality of awareness changed. Then what happened in your chest? Maybe there was a particular sensation, a movement, and a certain feeling, an emotion that arose and moved through you. And then also just noticing what happened to your body watching that. Taking a body snapshot or just scanning your body, your shoulders, your breathing. And I personally know my experience of watching that short video got me really activated in my nervous system. I felt my heart contracting. There was a lot of heat in my heart and stress, and it was very unpleasant to see people speaking to each other like that, and to have even these little tiny samples, like they're little drops of poison almost. I once ran a workshop in an organization called Communication Venoms. I didn't use the horseman analogy, but working with these things, they really do trigger us at a very primal nervous system level in terms of safety and connection, which is what relationships are all about, safety and connection. So what I want to do, almost as the antidote to what we've just experienced with that video, is to play another one where you get to experience a bit of the nervous system reset that you can experience. Just going to find it. Okay, so this is a wonderful, wonderful teacher. She's a trauma therapist and a yoga teacher. So she does a lot of somatic nervous system trauma work. She's got a wonderful book called Healing Complex PTSD. She's got a workbook. So I'm going to play this now so that you can get an experience of resetting your nervous system after how it was for you.
Hi, it's Dr. Ariel Schwartz. I want to do just a brief share with you on some self-care practices that you can do here and now, and as a way to attend to yourself with loving care and with compassion, and a way to kind of attend to your nervous system so that you can bring yourself into just a really sweet spot of present-centered awareness and calm and connection. So the first of these is to actually just work with your ears. So our ears are one of those places that the vagus nerve has a pretty deep connection. And when we look at the research on the use of vagus nerve stimulation through bioelectroceutical devices, one of the ways that these are used is to stimulate the tragus, which is right here on the side of the ear. It's kind of sits between your jaw and the ear, and it's this little kind of fleshy bit of cartilage in the front of the ear. So these bioelectroceuticals create a little bit of stimulation, electrical stimulation into this part of the ear. But we can also manually create contact, and just simply with your own hands, and you can do this on one side with me if you'd like, but just taking between your thumb and first finger and very gently creating a little bit of a squeeze or contact with this part of your ear. And just allowing yourself, there's nothing forced, there's nothing strong, just allowing yourself to make a little bit of contact here. And then I like to complement this by rolling out through the cartilage of the earlobe itself. So just some real gentle love, and maybe if you've got earrings in, you take them out or you leave them, that's fine. But just allowing yourself to, kind of honor your own contact with yourself. You can even take your finger and then just draw down on the lower earlobe, creating just a slight bit of downward pressure, and then just let that go. And for a moment before going to the other side, just noticing how the right side of your face feels, how you feel emotionally. Maybe you feel some warmth in that ear. Sorry, I did the right side, but whichever side you did, yeah. And then after you allow yourself to take that in, to receive that contact and the impact of that contact, you can go to the other side. So again, starting with the tragus right here, and it's allowing yourself to, for a few moments, just create a very gentle contact. I like to just very lightly Create a little squeeze there between finger and thumb. And then complementing that by rolling out through the cartilage of the ear, the earlobe, giving that a little bit of love. And then maybe a little bit of weighting down by using the finger inside of the earlobe and just gently downward pressure, like a few pulsing downward movements. Might be a little sensitive, so you can kind of gauge how much of that you do. And then take a moment, right? Take a moment to just sense and feel what was the experience. To me, I feel warmth of temperature in my face. I feel like an immediate opening of my peripheral vision, like I can feel my back body in a new way in response to that. So it's really simple. And I'll complement this with one more simple kind of self-contact, which is to greet some pressure points in your face. So the first of these is between the eyebrows, and you can do both sides at once, just allowing yourself to create a very gentle self-massage. And I absolutely love to take that then over the brows, just massaging across the brow points and outward. Oh, feels so good. You can even circular movements over your temples. And then last one in this short exploration is under the eyes, right here on the outside of the nose. And then just gentle circular movements with your fingertips over the cheekbones from the center, slowly outward, back out to the temples, massaging over the temples. Okay, so notice how that feels. Notice what might have shifted in just those few short movements and contacts. And it's something you can do anywhere, any time of the day. And if you're sensing that shift in your nervous system, lovely. Return to this, come back to it. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll connect again soon.
Thank you for sharing that, Ingrid. That's
Yeah.
really beautiful.
And
And
carry on, Lucille.
it's really useful to work somatically in working with couples and colleagues when the conflict enters the room. One of the things that we can do in our work is to offer co-regulation through the regulation of our own nervous systems, but then also to offer practices for regulation in session when things get heated. So it's a really lovely place to start. Even before we bring in clever theory, let's bring in the quality of the regulation of our nervous systems. Yeah.
Absolutely. And for us as coaches and practitioners and relationship counselors to signal how the field is safe and that conflict is really normal, and we unshaming everything that's going on in the relationship, I find. I don't know what your experience is of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think in some way, another way of thinking about it is to create a balcony in which we can observe the relationship and our patterns inside the relationship, even the conflict and the triggering and all of that. The moment we can see it, instead of just being on the dance floor with it, so much changes. Yeah.
Lovely. And you reminded me that Richard Rohr uses the metaphor of a viewing deck when he says we're cultivating the inner observer. We're getting into the contemplative perspective and the viewing deck on our life and on the different parts of ourselves, and we're able to establish a little bit of positive distanciation. So maybe we can open here and ask what's landing for people so far before we start going into fancy Enneagram jargon. Let's hear from you. What are your experiences? I know there's some people here who work with couples. Let's hear from you. What's arising from what you've seen so far?
I think the grounding practices are so helpful. Thanks for sharing those so that we can be aware of our own triggers when we're doing this work and make sure that we are holding ourselves separate from what's happening in the room so that we can bring awareness to managing the relationship instead of having to manage ourselves so much.
Mm-hmm. Is that something that you've found a long learning journey for you in terms of your kind of state in the room?
As a sexual four, that's been my lifelong learning journey in any interaction.
Yeah.
Patience, me too.
But that's true for all of us. So our type in the room is something. It's always going on. Yeah, thank you for that. Anyone else want to comment on what you've noticed or what's landed for you so far?
Ingrid, I really appreciated that video in practice. I'd not played with my ear before in that way. And I mean, it was really kind of wild because I automatically did this huge release of breath and felt my body soften. And I have a healthy amount of, skepticism, even though I'm trained as a somatic coach. I know that many of the people I'm meeting with might be a little bit skeptical about the mind-body connection and need some help in experiencing that directly for themselves. And I was both in the experience and also aware of what was happening for me in the experience. And it felt like this tremendous. So I thank you for that.
And do you think you can
nice.
use it with clients in a way that...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, thank you. I was just thinking this could be the whole couple session. I'm just going to get them to do things with their ears, and then they'll walk out and go on a date and have a cool time. Anyone else wanna reflect on anything that's been shared so far? Good news, you unmuted.
Yes, it is quite interesting, my experience, touching my ear, getting into my body, and really making that connection with relaxation. And I've never used the facial muscles or the ear when I get into my body. I've used other parts. And I find this very useful because sometimes when we work with couples, I find that in the beginning, it becomes very tense. Mm-hmm. And this practice would help me to help them to release the tension. Yes.
Wonderful. Yeah. Thank you very much.
I'm very grateful. And I will read the book more, and I will probably watch more videos of her to see what else I can use from there and to really get into the body, because that is my lifelong challenge, to get into the body.
Yeah. That's I know in the trauma modality that I studied, well, all of them are common. It's about healing is becoming safely embodied in the here and now in relationship, whether it's one-on-one or in a group, to become safely embodied in relationship here and now with other people, for me, is the definition of healing. So if we can do that safe embodiment, it opens the possibility of different kinds of connection and authenticity, because then we're not defending against the past. So yeah, thank you. I think the embodiment piece is absolutely core to this work. So yeah, Lucille, anything you want to say? Or
Yeah, I think just as we've noted, it's really important to be attuned to how the nervous systems come into a session, and to track that. And one of the ways we track that is through our own nervous systems as well. So our nervous systems are little radar screens that are tapping into a lot more than the words that are being said in a session. Yeah, so the more attuned we can be, the more we can be of service in a whole body way, not just through the words that we say and the frameworks we offer. And I know that there is a lot that the Enneagram does offer into the field as well. So, yeah.
I wanted just to add on that, Lucille, that the Gottman research, they studied thousands of couples.
Yeah.
I think it was almost 10,000 couples that went into that research to say what those four horsemen are. And the way that they did it, and I actually met somebody who worked as a researcher, they would get a couple into a room and they would say, talk about a difficulty in your relationship at the moment, just something that's a little bit difficult. And then they would observe them for 5 minutes, and they would have people sitting behind the window, the screen, tracking their facial expressions, and they literally mapped different parts of the face. So if the one partner said something and the other partner like raised their eyebrow or went, they would track that. And it was on the basis of that they were able to predict with about 90% accuracy, I think 95, which couples were going to survive beyond 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. So the nonverbal is absolutely crucial. And you'll know what it's like if somebody sighs and rolls their eyes, what that does to your nervous system. So as coaches, how do we work with that relational field and with those signals to create safety and to actually name what's going on? And I sometimes say, okay, can we just rewind and then relax, and then can you finish that sentence again? And the person realizes, how they were answering the first time. Anything else there, Lucille, before we go on to some Enneagram stuff?
Yeah, I think the core thing in that space is it's so easy for us to like step into unhealthy triangulation in working with two other people together, especially if one of the people in the couple or in the pair triggers us in a particular way into our own core wounds. And then what happens is that we reinforce in some way the way in which the four horsemen are galloping through the conversation, through our own facial cues, through our own ways in which we do that. And so holding space, and one of the ways in which we can work with that is to think about our roles. And this is pulling in part from organization relationship systems coaching when we're working at work, but also to work with ideas around the relationship. And some of the beautiful work that Shelley does in her work, so shout out to you, Shelley, of holding the space for the relationship. So if my client, when I work with a couple, is the relationship between these two people, and with colleagues, the us, the third entity that exists, instead of the two parties separately, if I'm holding space for that, the four horsemen gallop through me much less, because I'm not invested in one of the two people in the relationship in that way. And so that's what we want to hold space for. Our client is the us, not so much the two people there. Yeah.
Absolutely. In my training as well, you're working with the couple, they're sitting facing each other. And to a large extent, as much as possible, you facilitate in such a way as they completely ignore you. So you're giving them sentence stems and facilitating a listening process, but your attention is on the field, the relational field between them, the rupture and repair, the subtle signs of that one doesn't feel heard. There's a rupture. How do you work with them to restore safety and connection? So that's the whole thing all the time. So thanks for
Yeah.
And since you mentioned Shelley, and I don't know your work, Shelley, I saw you nodding. Can I invite you in to talk about your experience of this and what's coming up for you in this conversation so far?
Thank you so much, and thanks for that, Lucille. If you hear a funny little noise, it's my cat that purrs with a really weird sound. So she, just putting it out there, if you hear something weird, it's a funny little whistle sound. Um, so absolutely. So I very much am focusing on, and in fact, I'll just show you how I set it up before we even start the conversation. So before I meet the couple, I alert them to this idea that, and I will show this image, which is that there's a me, a you, and an us, and that I'm the voice of the us. And so what I'm trying to do is to understand, what are you each doing separately to contribute or contaminate the us, to help or hinder the us, or to neglect or nourish the us?
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Yeah, exactly. And so what happens is, I will say to them that I'm the voice, and all I'm here to do is to observe what is going on in that space. So if I reflect something back to you, it's because I'm observing it happen in the us space. And that thing is either helping or hindering. It's either serving or not serving. How is it serving? How is it not serving? What's the cost of that? And so I really am focused on what's the dynamic that's playing out. And so I don't feel like I take sides, and they don't feel like I'm taking sides, because I'm always reflecting back, what is the voice of this relationship space, that's my client. And so yeah, it seems to help, and people don't feel like I ever take sides, because I'm just reflecting what's happening in that space.
Thank you. Lucille, you used that slide. Anything you want to say about it? It obviously inspired you. Thanks so much, Shelley.
Yeah, I think that is one of the things that we actually reference in our report, is that idea of what is my work, what is your work, and what is the work that we need to do collectively in the relationship, as a wonderful way of also allowing us to open up that contemplative viewing deck. It doesn't always have to be above what we're doing, but it's kind of in that us space. In a big way. And even with organization relationship systems coaching, what we often do when we're working with colleagues at work, so not just romantic relationships, is to really work that space where I am in my perspective, and this is how I can even work on a relationship without the other person in the room, and I can step into the perspective of the other, and then I can step into the third entity perspective and look at me and this other person who may or may not be in the room, and go, what does the relationship want to say to us? And find a way of cultivating that voice for people in the relationship, not just that being the relationship of the coach or the therapist that's working with someone. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And I'd like to ask you, Shelley, as a practitioner, something that I've faced very often is that there's one person that instigates the couple's work, and they drag their partner along, and they want to fix their partner invariably. They maybe know the Enneagram, and then they've diagnosed their partner, and they come to me and they say, can you do couples work with us? My partner is, and they tell me the story of everything wrong with their partner, and that person doesn't want to be there. So I've got my way of working with that, but I'm interested in your perspective on how do you deal with somebody having a big fixing agenda right at the beginning?
So before I see the couple, I do an onboarding process, which I ask them to articulate What are you hoping the coaching will enable in you? What is the benefit of that? What are you hoping the coaching will enable in you in the relationship? What is the benefit of that? What do you perceive currently to be your biggest challenges in that? What do you perceive? What are you not willing to do, or what are the things that you're so there's several questions really that I collect before the couple arrive, so they've already done some thinking before they enter the room. So when I see them for the first time, I'm already quite aware if there's this agenda that's playing out, and if that is the case, then if it seems like there is if it seems like there's less willingness from one party, I sort of start by this, showing this thing, and then I will say to them, and what I'd like to do before we begin is to check on your willingness levels. So if 10 out of 10 is I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make this relationship work, and I'm here because I'm committed and I'm all in. If that represents 10 and 0 is the opposite of that, where would you rate yourself on the willingness? And then, one will say like 9 and the other one will say 3, for example. And then I will say, and what would make you more willing? Because that's the first place we have to begin, is what would make you want to invest? So it's kind of like if you were to go to see a sports coach and said, we've got to cycle this tandem bike for 100 kilometers, and one of you is willing and the other one isn't, well, then that's not really going to work. So we need to find a way that would make you want to ride that bike or run that marathon. So, and what's that going to be? And that's where we start, actually. And usually then it becomes clear what they need to see different in order for them to feel more willing. So we start with that first before we even go into the other stuff.
Well, I mean, there's a lovely way of working with that analogy of the tandem bike. Having observed my father and my brother tandem biking for a long, long time together, is the trick with that is never let the one that doesn't want to be there cycle at the back. They have to cycle at the front, so you can see that they're still cycling. So the core thing is, I think, especially if you think about the conversation dynamics, like if the unwilling partner gets to be the one that follows the conversation all the time, it's very different to like inviting their voice in first on some of the questions quite deliberately so that they can cycle in front some of the time and
correct
and that self-correct some of it quite naturally.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Yeah, and I'll also ask, what do you need in this space to feel more safe and comfortable to explore that, otherwise I'm going to be doing most of the heavy lifting. And so I'll make that quite clear, is that, that I keep putting it back onto them as much as I can. Like, I'm not here to make your relationship work. I'm here to facilitate a conversation between the two of you so that you can make your relationship work. And if you don't want to do that, I'm not attached to you staying together. Like, I'm quite forthright about it. Like, I'm not attached. I believe that if a couple are not drawing out, if they're not flourishing, if the relationship is not serving either of them, then they're probably both better off not being in the relationship. So that can sometimes be revealed through the conversation.
I think that's a helpful thing to put right into the room, because that attachment, does our success feel invested in the relationship working? Do we feel like a good relationship therapist or coach if the couple, has a lovely breakthrough in their relationship and things flow in a new way? And are we attached to that happening? Or that non-attachment of they're going to be doing the work and they're going to be making decisions. And my self-worth has got nothing to do with the outcome that they decide for themselves. I think as we know how Enneagram type can play into that, like as a 7, I want to make them have a good time, you know, like, what are you doing this weekend? So, you know, we want to do our type to them. And I know with some of my 3 supervision clients, they feel attached to their client succeeding, and they feel attached to their client doing the homework, and they get frustrated when the client doesn't do the homework. So being aware of our type in the room and what makes us feel like a failure or not a good therapist, I think that's a big part of the work as well. Hey, Lucille, what do you think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And if we're attached to an outcome, then that's the way in which we're going to corrupt the field with our intentions and our ideas. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I just want to say that it's not that I don't care. It is
Yeah.
about that I'm allowing to emerge what needs to be emerged between the two. And to me, love is an emergence. And so I'm saying, well, you're saying you want to be with each other. You're saying you want this relationship to work, and yet you're doing this. How do you think that is helping? Like,
Yeah.
I'm curious, what's your good reasoning for that? Because that
Yeah.
doesn't seem to be working here.
Yeah.
Is it perhaps time to try something different?
Yeah. I think there is something to be said about the frame in the kind of consumer instant gratification culture that we're in at the moment, where there's an equation and an overinvestment in having my individual needs met perfectly. And I think in some way, AI is going to have a massive impact on that over the next couple of years. If I ask my AI chatbot things, it says yes, and it gives me an answer immediately. And so in that space, if we think about a kind of a view of the different phases of relationship in some way, when we're in a space of infatuation, in romantic love, in a big way, you know, everything's wonderful. And even when there is funny stuff happening, I interpret it generously, and you're the best thing since sliced bread. But what happens is a lot of people seek out a coaching kind of intervention when they're in the phase of the power struggle. And so in the phase of the power struggle, there's maybe the 4 horsemen are showing up. There's different things that are chafing. There's ways in which I figured out that you are not going to perfectly meet my needs, and in fact, maybe, that's not even really the deal with love. So I think you're going to complete me, and then I realize that no one else can do that for me. And so in this power struggle phase of the relationship, what is useful is to help give clients the language to have that contemplative viewing deck around the relationship. And sometimes being really forthright is part of what breaks the pattern of just like kind of digging away at each other and reenacting our old wounds. And from giving that voice, it can create the possibility for people to commit to actually then do the work. It's very different to the commitment that comes when we're in love. This is now we know how we're chafing each other, and we can recommit to doing the work in a way together. And that's where relationship then becomes the anvil on which we forge our souls, right? There's a lot of work that we cannot do by ourselves. And that's not only in romantic relationships, but also our other relationships at work and with significant others in our life. Relationships are the place where so much of the work becomes visible. Yeah. So maybe that's an interesting frame into what we've just shared.
Absolutely. And so I think there's a good segue into the Enneagram, because the Enneagram describes 1,300 types of Enneagram struggle, of power struggle. because we're struggling between our harmonic triads, our ways of problem solving, our formula for life, our reality strategy, which is our type, our tri-type, our dominant instinct, our blind instinct. I've got a reality strategy of what I think how life should be lived. And there's often rigidification around that, and it's a defense against the past. So I'm not actually here. I'm bringing my defense against the past into the present moment, and that's where we start reenacting our patterns and our trauma. So what I want to do is show you some slides about that, and then we can bring in Enneagram stuff around that. Because, you know, the Enneagram's got all these multiple layers and dimensions. This is my little bit of the Enneagram at a glance. So I've put a whole lot of Enneagram variables on here, and there are lots more. Ichazo came up with 108 Enneagrams, and here I've only got 4 of his Enneagrams. But what we've got is the object relation. So that's people's attachment style. Then we've got the Hornevians, which is our defensive stance. So some of us are assertive, some of us are withdrawn, some of us are compliant, go along, more of a pleasing type of style. And then we've got the harmonics, which is how do I act when my needs are frustrated and I'm not getting what I want. So we've got all these incredible triads in the Enneagram and our levels of health that give us the opportunity to stand on the viewing deck and say, that's what I do in this relationship. And the Enneagram helps us understand why. It helps us understand the insecurities and the fears and the heart wounds and the childhood wounding behind that. So, I mean, maybe if we can talk about the harmonics a bit, Lucille, because that's something that I found really helpful working with pairs, working with couples, is for them to understand the harmonics. Are you comfortable going there?
Yeah, let's go there. Yeah, and I think the harmonics are an interesting. So if we think of any of the structures inside the Enneagram, literally as a little bit of a mirror that helps us look at the relationship through a safe perspective. Because when we're on the dance floor of the relationship, it's about, you know, what happened and this event and this pattern, and we're in it. The moment we bring in a pattern, the pattern helps us through the pattern to reinterpret what's happening in the relationship in a way that offers more spaciousness, that moves the energy from me and you playing this match with each other into a third perspective that actually opens up then the space for insight. So especially when I'm working in a space where we need a very safe entry point, because maybe people are very nervous about being in the space, or they're bringing in a frustration of needs already as the starting point. I think the harmonics are a great way to work with this. So we have the 792, which is the positive outlook version of this. So when my needs are not met, I'm going, it's okay. You know, I'm sure they'll be met at some point, and they're not really that important anyway. And tomorrow's a great day, isn't it? So we do it, and 7, 9, and 2 would do that in different ways. But it's like, don't worry, it'll be okay. It'll all work out. 4, 6, and 8, the emotional realness version of this really has to do with my needs are not being met, and I'm going to make sure that you feel how they're not being met. So there's I'm offering the frustration and the emotion and the intensity and whatever it is, the reactive energy, as a way of trying to force the hand into helping those needs being met. And then 1, 3, 5 is really in the rational competence, like how quickly can we fix and problem solve this? Let's not talk about the needs not being met and how that makes you feel. Let's just go, what's the way through this? Let's just think about this rationally. Let's find a solution. Let's move on. And I'm sure we've all in our relationships felt that chafing. It happens at work, it happens in intimate relationships too, where I'm going, let's talk about my feelings. And someone else says, oh, don't worry, tomorrow, let it be, tomorrow it'll be fine. Or the other person goes, let's put the emotions aside, let's find the solution. And the interesting thing around this is that I think these patterns play out in a little bit more of a complex way than just looking at our main reality strategy. So our main Enneagram type. Because our trifix, for example, also plays into this. So if you have all three, so if your trifix is 279, you've got all three the positive outlook types. It's like positive outlook on steroids, or all the rational competence, you've got it on steroids. So you can think of that. But then you've also got the mixed signaling. So I've got emotional realness and rational competence in mine. So I go from like really vomiting my feelings into the relationship into going, okay, now let's problem solve. And the positive outlook and my partner on the other side goes, okay, I am crushed, and can we pick this up tomorrow, and please don't problem solve after you've done that. So it's interesting how there can be mixed signals in how our trifixes stack up. I don't know if that makes sense for you, Ingrid.
Yeah, a lot. And I'm very aware of when someone has either a triple positive outlook or a triple emotional realness or triple rational competence in relationships, whether it's at work or at home, because then the blind spot is just that much bigger. And it's very difficult for them to appreciate the needs of someone who has a very different strategy. They find it threatening or frustrating. And I've put Russ Hudson's quote at the bottom here for each one, where you've got two of the same in a relationship, how those relationships end up, crashing and burning. Because of the way things either get ignored or amplified. So if you've got if you've got a lot of positive outlook in both people, they're not dealing with issues. Things are swept under the rug. I'm a 7, so when I have relationship conflict with anyone, with my kids, hey, let's go and have a picnic. Let's go quad biking. Let's just do something fun. That's the way we deal with conflict, is just have a good time together and enjoy each other's company and hope that the feelings go away. So I've got 7 and 9. But then the 4 feeling style in me is there is immense emotional drama going on, and I'm feeling ashamed, and I wish I were a different person, and I feel like the worst mother in the world. And then I'm trying to like earn approval. There's all kinds of emotional drama going on. So these things come together in different ways. And I don't know about you, Lucille, but I think our heart center trifix is really, really important in relationships. It's got disproportionate weight. So I feel like my 4 in my type is more important in a way than some of the others. What do you think?
I think especially in our intimate relationships. So when we're talking about, for example, just a collegial relationship at work, I think that weighting is slightly less than when we're in the heart space, the relationship, the intimacy piece. So yeah, I think that is something interesting to think about. So I might be an Enneagram 5, but I have got 2 in my heart space, in my trifix. And so that 2 is going to be a significant role player in terms of what shows up there. Yeah.
So how I earn approval, how I earn positive regard, how I make you love me, because the 2, 3, and 4 are really the image corner of the Enneagram. It's how we try and elicit love. So
yes,
that's part of our strategy that's going to be amplified a bit.
It's the part of the strategy that gets enacted when I'm in the panic of separation, right? And so the potential for separation. If we look at Jaak Panksepp's work on what the different neuroaffective circuitry is that get invited in, 2, 3, 4 are the things that get in the panic that comes from separating from significant other in that way. For me, Ingrid, one of the things that's interesting is sometimes you see in a relationship that's ongoing for a long time, that the conflict becomes about the meta pattern rather than the events. Every time I do this, you try and fix instead of listen. And so we can use the harmonics to almost unpick and take some of the emotional charge out of the conflict that's evoked by the meta pattern, as much as we can also work with this as a way of looking at a particular issue that's on the table.
100%. Yes, and I think the sooner we can do that, the better. To be able to say, look, it's not actually about the dishes. Not overtly say that, but get them to recognize that it's about a clash in problem-solving strategies. It's a clash in views of the world, maps of reality, and Enneagram preoccupations, and our imagined solutions to things. Now, I've got a niece, and we have the best relationship in the world. She doesn't let me do 7. She just doesn't let me escape from a difficult conversation because she knows that I'm an escape artist. So with these harmonics, I find particularly, and this is a slide I use in the workplace with people, is to let them look, what is their main type, what is their tri-type, and to appreciate how that is experienced by others. So the rational competence types don't realize that other people can experience them as quite robotic. Like if somebody's emotional realness and they want to talk about the feelings and they want other people to feel the same feelings as them and to take them seriously, and that's like a driver of what happens next, and it's a way of sense making what's going on here, the rational competence types are like, can we just put that away? And they don't realize that alienates emotional realness types, and it alienates positive outlook types in different ways. And vice versa, positive outlook types alienate rational competence and emotional realness because they're not problem solving effectively. They're not being efficient. They're trying to make everything feel good. So they're not doing rational competence solutioneering and getting to the problem and fixing it fast. And they're not dealing with the actual feelings. So what I find working with the harmonics, it really helps people to realize, oh, I thought that was a good solution, but it absolutely doesn't work for the other people in the room. And to be able to put this up and all of us joke about it and laugh, and, you know, it really depersonalizes it. So there's value to my strategy, but damn, I start seeing the value to other people's strategies. So what do you say?
Yeah, I think that's a lovely way of working with that. And one can work with that, obviously, in the pair context as well. But what one can then bring in is how are the 4 horsemen galloping between us as we are doing our strategies in that kind of way. So, you know, if I sit in rational competence and you're doing positive outlook and that's activating contempt, part of what I need to do is to take responsibility for my contempt as much as I need to also take responsibility for the impact of my style on the other. So it brings us back to the place of awareness, allowing us to take responsibility and to decide how we want to nurture the space between us. Yeah, is this serving or not serving the space between us? And what set of choices will do that, so that all of these have value, you know, all of these styles have value. It's all about, is it appropriate given the context and where we are in the conversation? And so let us dance a little bit more nimbly between them with greater love and care and affection for the us space than just robotically doing our pattern, whatever that pattern is.
Yes. Yeah. And I just want to jump ahead to something that links to what you are saying, is when we are nimble. So the functional adult, the adaptive adult, is integrated. There's a high level of intrapersonal integration where we are able to notice, wow, I'm flooded and I'm flooded because of that person's stonewalling. I'm feeling contempt. This is what it feels like neurophysiologically. My impulse is to do X, but I'm just going to stay with this for a minute. So in that space of integration of different aspects of our consciousness, the nervous system, the mind, the top-down, the bottom-up integration, the 9 domains of integration. We can't go into that now. But what happens when we integrate from the adult ego consciousness is these are the qualities that emerge. We're flexible, we're adaptable, we have a sense of inner coherence, we're energized, we're able to be there, and we've got an inner stability. Thich Nhat Hanh, I love him, he talks about a stable inner home. So then we're coming into the relationship, and when it starts raining and there's something terrible happens, as things do, life happens, we're able to hold the umbrella calmly as an adult and respond in the moment, not just defend against the past. And our Enneagram type, when it's not integrated, is actually a child ego state, pretending to be an adult, but we've got the wrong shoes on and we've got a mask, we dressed up. I love this metaphor of the shoes. It reminds me of when I used to work in a corporate environment, and I felt as though I was walking around with these big army boots because I had this like masculine identified image to try and be credible in a very male-dominated environment. So it's a fake image that makes us feel secure, but it doesn't fit the moment. So when we integrate and we're conscious of what's going on in us, and the Enneagram helps us with that, we're able to be more, the word that Lucille used was nimble. And then we go back to the childhood wounds, and the Enneagram's got a lot of language for that, is what wound is our adaptive ego strategy compensating for? So if I feel worthless as a 3, then I've got to earn my worth. And I've got to show off an image, and I've got to make that image look great. That's a compensation. But if I've integrated my wounding and my pain, then I'm able to stay in myself, and I don't have to do my type so much. So Lucille, and to you.
Yeah, and I think we can think of that very much in the relationship space as well. So when we're in the relationship space, the us space, the us can also be a space that nurtures the functional relation, the functional adult relationship, the real relationship, as opposed to the imagined relationship that we have that that needs to serve to actually heal my wounds. The other person needs to heal my wounds in some way. But the quality of the us does not necessarily mean that we will not get dysregulated, or we will not, that everything's going to be perfect. It's about when we do meet troublesome spots in the space between us, how do we find our way back to each other, if that is the choice that we're making in this relationship, and how do we not just regulate but co-regulate? What are the ways in which we evoke through loving kindness the functional adult in the other, as well, through the way in which we do our work ourselves.
And Terry Real and Havel Hendricks and Imago, they say you've got to kind of, in the power struggle, it's about stopping thinking that you can manipulate the other person into taking your childhood needs more seriously than their childhood needs.
Their childhood needs,
you want
exactly.
them to parent you, and you try and manipulate them to parent you in a way that you wished you had been. And then when you both recognize that you actually start offering the person the safety that they long for, in the good faith that they're going to offer you the safety that you long for. So they're always 4 people in the room. There's our adult ego consciousness, and then all these wounded child parts and exiles, and if you use IFS language. So yeah, I think we've jumped to the trauma piece, but now maybe we can actually look at, you know, when I looked at your report, if you're happy to go from here.
Let's go. Let's go
I
there.
looked at your website and I started exploring the report. It was saying these are the things that it does: beyond surface, empathy instead of misunderstanding, from reactivity to that intentional growth. This particularly stood out for me because that's very much what trauma-informed work is about, is that it's not pathologizing, it's not diagnostic, and we're not interpreting our client. We're not saying, oh, you're doing this or that, because we want to really unshame them. And we don't want to trigger their identity trauma of, I'm a bad person, I'm a bad partner. So those are the things that stood out for me. And just this known, supported, and free to grow, how that links to, Arvel Hendrik speaks about our deepest need is for safety and connection. But our deepest longing is also our deepest fear, which is authentic connection. So then I saw, okay, this is the landing page of the report. And I was so curious, and I hope you can help us understand why is the first thing that people see in the couples report, what made you choose these variables and how you lay them out?
Yeah, so I think the core thing that we're trying to do with this report, and it's just at the meta level before we look at this page, is often people come to a space and they go, are we compatible? Yeah, and that's a question. Are we compatible? The core perspective that we're coming from here is to change that question into how are we going to be wonderful for each other, and how are we going to trigger each other, knowing that in any combination there is the potential for a relationship to work. So we're not saying, this is not the kind of report that you'd get to go, yes, you should be together, no, you shouldn't be together. This is the kind of report that goes, if we are going to be together, what does the work look like? And so the first snapshot here is obviously we're not going to try and go, here's everything you need to know about your Enneagram type and the other person's Enneagram type. We're really going to the heart immediately, going, what's the core motivation of the type? Because we know interculturally how that motivation expresses itself will be radically different. When I'm in Nigeria and when I'm in Finland, my 5 is going to look different, but the core motivation is a good starting point to go from, because the behavior is going to be in part socialized around that motivation. And then we go immediately, let's make the box harder to be a stereotype. So going to the trifix, how do the different centers show up in the space? And that's where, for me, I sometimes struggle a little bit with this idea of, like, I am an action type or I am a feeling type. We all have a way we do action, a way we do feeling, and a way we do the thinking piece. And the trifix is a way of bringing that in. But then we go to the instincts. Because the instincts, as Russ says, you've quoted him already, so my quote for us for the day, our lives are a temple to our dominant instincts. But it's not just our dominant instincts, it's our blind instincts as well. When our instincts stack similarly, so we're both high in the sexual instinct, or we're both high in the self-praise instinct, and then we're both low in the same thing, there's a whole lot of everyday chafing and jostling to get my instinctual needs met that leak out of the relationship. Yeah, because we kind of have an unspoken agreement that what is important and what is not important is not important. That may create a false harmony because we're not going to fight about whether the toilet paper is on the right way as much as people whose instincts are stacked differently. And so as much as the harmonics are a useful map to help us understand these things, the dominant and the blind instincts, the neglected side for each individual and what it means for the us space, can help us see some interesting patterns play out. So to use an example of a couple in my family, I won't name them, but they are both low and blind in the social instinct. They stack self-praise, sexual self-praise, but they're both low and blind in the social instinct. And what's happened is that as they're together longer and longer and longer, they have become more and more insular and more disinterested in how they connect into the greater society and belonging and family system and what's happening in that space. And so they've kind of grown a big moat around their relationship. And what that means is you have to parachute in as a concerned person into that relationship, because they're not going to allow the larger community to hold them in their struggles. And even their friends, people who really care for them. And so that's like a double play versus where one person is low in self-praise, and that's the other person in the partnership's highest point. So then often we have this, you are always neglecting yourself. You should be more like me, then we can have that kind of dynamic play out. The instinct stacks have this deep way of helping us understand the fabric of the conversation. What have you seen around this, Ingrid? Because I know that for you, the stack of the instinct is also quite important, as opposed to just going, the dominant instinct is this, and therefore, this is my instinctual subtype.
Absolutely. In the workplace and in one-on-one relationships, I think the instinctual sequence is one of the most important things, because, John Lakovich says, he's written a fantastic book on the instinctual drives and the Enneagram. And he says our Enneagram is an instinct management system. That's what our type is. The instincts are primary. They say what our preoccupation is, whether it's survival or intensity in the SX, or our place in the social fabric, power, networks, those kinds of things. I mean, I've just written a Substack on this. If you want to go and look, there's some nice descriptions on the instincts that people find quite helpful to clarify that, especially that the sexual instinct is not about one-on-one, long-term, good relationships. It's about charge and attraction. The social is about sustained, good, healthy relationships.
Yeah, I think there's something about the sexual instinct that we understand better when we look at animals, because the instincts are present in animal behavior and mammalian behavior, for example, as well, but even more broadly than that. The sexual instinct is actually that part that is, when we think about it in from a certain lens, it's a whole lot of wasted energy. It's the wasted energy that goes into growing crazy feathers and all kinds of weird mating behavior that you wouldn't normally do if you were just going to conserve energy. And so it's like this big, like, please see me, and please relate to me, and please love me kind of energy that comes out. So there's a big emotional charge that goes with the sexual instinct, that can spill out as charisma, as a whole lot of ways in which we show up into the space, which is so different to just saying it is wanting to invest in the quality of the one-to-one relationship. One of the things that I'll just put this out there, that I struggle with a little bit, and I don't know exactly how to get this right, is that there are parts of the broader coaching world, in certain parts of the world more than others, that are incredibly sensitive to the word sexual. And I don't know what you found around. So I would love to say the word sexual, and then I've got sexual instinct, and then we've got half a world of coaches going, you can't say that word in our part of the world. And so then one has to find different language.
Yeah.
But yeah, can't please everyone. So
I use Mario Sikora's language. I find it very helpful.
transmitting.
Yeah. So the self-praise is called preserving. The sexual is called transmitting. So you get that electrical charge feeling, and the social is called navigating. So that's the language I use, especially in corporates.
Yeah.
But yeah, and the sexual is about taking a risk to establish a connection with someone new. So it's about novelty, it's about risk, it's about charge, that charge and chemistry, and it's also about merging. So it can be supplemented into with the divine. Like Rumi, I think, was definitely a sexual fall. You know, he was ecstatically connected to God. He was like drunk on love for God. So that's definitely a sexual energy. But the sequencing is really important. And an anecdote just came to mind when you were talking about the clash in instincts. About 20 years ago, I had a boyfriend, and I'm self-praise blind. I don't plan. I don't like to plan. I don't want to know what's happening over the weekend. I want to wake up on Saturday and think, what am I going to do today? So it's sexual dominant, self-praise blind. I never book accommodation. When I go on holiday, I just arrive and see what happens. Turn left and do something. You know, it's very, very spontaneous. And you can imagine a self-praise person finding that quite challenging. So what he used to do is he used to plan things in advance. Like there'd be a family function and there'd be this and that. And he'd have the calendar planned 6 weeks in advance, but I didn't know. He didn't tell me. So I would be going along and he'd say, do you feel like going to my parents today? They're having a big thing. And I'd be like, yeah, cool. And then I found out he'd known about it for weeks. So he was very strategic, you know, recognizing that if he had told me, I would have felt trapped and suffocated, because one thing you need to know about the blind instinct is that we have an antipathy to it. It isn't just something that's off our radar. It's something that feels threatening to our dominant instinct, like it's going to take away our opportunity to do the dominant. And we have some shame around it. We don't know how to do it. Like as a sexual 7 dominant with self-praise blind, like I don't really know how to function as a structured adult. There's low self-efficacy. So plan. You know, I'd love to be able to plan. There's shame around it. So handing that to you, Lucille.
Yeah, and I think you can take the instincts into so many domains of the relationship. So those patterns play out in how we parent, how we think about some practical decisions together and how that plays out, how our intimacy works. So you can take the pattern and apply it to so many spaces. I remember when our kids were little, myself and James's kids were little, we used to have this instinctual battle play out all the time. So the battle went something like this when the kids were really little. So I'd go, why don't we take the kids to the beach? And he'd go, okay, just give me a moment. And then it would be half an hour of like packing the nappy bag, making sure we have 7 changes of clothes. And I'm like, by the time that bag is packed, I'm like, I no longer want to go. And so then it's like, but now I'm ready to go and I want to go, but now I don't want to go because it's the moment's passed. And another way in which that played out was also this way in which if he were busy on the weekend, sometimes he'd phone me from the golf course. He'd say, have you fed the kids yet? And I would get offended. Like, what do you mean, have I fed the kids? The kids haven't asked for food yet. Why would I, you know? So this is all in hand. So also low self-praise on my case. In my case, very high self-praise in his case. They're outside. They're having fun. Just leave them. And he'd go, 30 minutes and they'll be fighting. Your choice. And I'd literally, that thing of like, there's something about that self-praise that we're defended and ashamed. You know, I know what I'm doing. And then often he'd be mostly pretty much always. He'd be right that 30 minutes later, the kids would be fighting because they're hungry, because they don't know to ask for food, because they're too little. And so the way in which the instincts can become part of the kind of way in which we clash in a way in so many different domains of the relationship is part of what this helps me understand. And if we don't work with a whole stack, we don't understand how that misalignment plays out and how it triggers us individually as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say it's the most important thing in the Enneagram, really, is the instincts. And yeah.
Yeah. Some people who use the Enneagram for what one would call compatibility, which for me is dangerous territory, but people would say there would be an easier compatibility regardless of Enneagram type if you have more of an instinct match.
Yeah.
So use that, lose that. It's not in our reports.
For me,
Shelley?
just the thing of somebody's dominant is the other person's blind is where you're going to have trouble. Like you can imagine
Yes.
self-praised dominant who's already planned their December holiday. They've got a budget. They want to know where they're staying. And me, I really don't want that. I just want to arrive and I want to see what happens. And then I meet somebody and they give me an idea. You know, the self-praised dominant person can't deal with that. They find it extremely uncomfortable. So Shelley?
Yeah.
I'm curious to know your strategies for solving that, because your idea about, strategically raising, okay, maybe we should go visit my parents is lovely, except if you say, no, I don't want to. And then, and then he's, or in a scenario like that where one person is trying to be as spontaneous as possible, but also is wanting to honor commitments that they have. So what did you do to navigate that together?
It never happened because I never have plans.
No, but if he wanted you if his suggestion was, let's go to the parents, and you said, no, I don't feel like it. Like, do you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, I mean, it didn't happen. I was with him for 4 years.
okay.
It didn't happen because I'm kind of up for whatever.
Okay. So you're quite easygoing around it, as long as it's, okay.
Yeah, very. And I guess the 9 in my tri-type, very accommodating. Like with my daughter, I'll say, what do you feel like doing? And whatever she wants to do, I'll be on board and go and do it and have a lovely time with her. I guess one of the ways that I work in relationship is to do that 9-ish thing of I'll come with you and get excited about what you want,
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that kind of strategic management of my instincts would not work so well given my reality strategy. And so the question is, how do we work with this when that's part of what's in the couple space? I think the first thing is to give the pattern of frustration with each other a name. It takes so much of the charge out of it. It's not you being an arsehole and not meeting my needs. It's us having a different instinct stack. So the moment we can take the charge out of it, that's the first thing. So then we've created that space where the us can go, okay, your needs, my needs, our needs. And that's the space that we want to work with. And I think there is something around the individual work that we need to do. So each person in the couple can do individual work around bringing a kind of a cognitive behavioral lens to some of my low instincts. So it helps me to learn how to take care of my own needs as a low self-preservation, because then you don't feel you need to constantly be checking up on whether I'm taking on. And so that can be useful. When we do work in a relationship, some of the work is in the us space, but sometimes the individual work is very helpful. And then I think there it's useful for the relationship to find the scripts that connects us in when we're in an instinctual battle. Yeah. So then we can find ways, and that's in part what we try to do in the report, is to offer people starter scripts almost. So like when this thing plays out, a starter script could be, I realize that spontaneity is very important to you, and I'm wondering, how we can meet that need, whatever the starter script is, to practice that a couple of times and to then find our own way of building bridges between those things more easily over time.
Absolutely. Thank you.
That's cool. It just reminds me of my husband likes me to speak in bullet points as much as possible. And, he's like, get to the point as quickly and as efficiently as possible. So the other day, so we like that meta style of communication where I like long storytelling, and the light was shining and you could smell this in the air, and I'm like getting a whole long storytelling thing. And he's like, what's the point? What's the point? When are you going to get to the point? So the other day, I was about to start a story, and then I said, do you want the story or the point? So he said, the point. I said, we're going to a wedding. So he was like, whose wedding? I said, that's the point. There you go. You got it. I'm not giving any more information. You got the point.
That's brilliant. Oh, that's brilliant. Yeah, to build bridges. There's one thing I wanted to say as well, as a bit of a caveat to making it sound like I'm the most easygoing person in the world and so easy to have a relationship with. I once had a relationship with a triple emotional realness person, and I would have arranged something like, we're going to have sushi on a Friday night, and then we're going to watch a movie. I've got this idea of what a cool time we're going to have. And he says, we need to talk. And that was like, cannot believe you are ruining my Friday night. You want to talk. Are you joking? So it's like, I'm very accommodating as long as it's not that.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So maybe what is useful is I could just show people a little bit of some of the things we have in the reports, like the scripts, etc., to maybe just bridge. I'm aware that we have about 15 minutes left. So I just want to make sure that I have the right one on my screen here. I'm going to go into we've spoken more of couples things, so I'm going to go through the couples report rather than through the workplace pairs report. But to be clear, we have two reports we've developed. One is for colleagues at work, and that one is structured with different language. And so that helps us when people go, we need a team intervention, but actually it's just two people that don't get along. So how do we start working with that instead of dragging the whole team through a thing so that two people can fix their relationship challenges?
Lucille, is there, I'm sorry to interrupt, just a quick question because I am going to have to hop off a little early. With the organizational report for colleagues, peers, is there a sample of that on your website if we're not going to go through it here?
Absolutely. So what I will do immediately now is we will send a link to those sample reports through afterwards. Would that work for you, Heather? Would you like one now? But what I can do, let me just quickly pop it in the just if you want to take a quick quiz, I'm popping it in the chat now. And what we also going to offer everyone is, that's the sample of the colleagues report. And if you want to try out one of these for free, let me pop that link in here for you. You can use this link. And you'll see you can choose whether it's a couples or a colleagues report, whether you have the data or whether you want an assessment. If you have the data, you can just say, The one person is a 3 and trifix is 315 and SX dominant, SB blind. Or you can ask for an assessment, and all of that's for free just to try it out. The core thing is, if you don't know the trifix and the dominant and blind instinct, we can't do the report because that's part of the data set that we work with. Yeah, but take us up on that offer. Hopefully that would do that, be useful for you. Now I'm back in having the wrong report on the screen. So now I am going to share what we have here. Okay.
We'll send things, don't worry, we'll send a follow-up email with the slides, sample reports, and how to connect with everything that we've spoken about.
So we've got an intro. There's the me, us, you diagram as well. There's some suggestions on how to get the most out of the report. And then we've got the basic profile. And from there, we play a little bit with how does this combo actually work? And it speaks of what works and what might be hard. And in this piece, we're actually not just drawing on main type with main type. We're looking at the full trifix with the full trifix with the full instinct stack to give you a very unique view of what's happening in this relationship. And we have what works well and typical challenges so that we can have both sides of the story. We've got some stuff around the instincts and how to align the instincts where they match and miss each other. So that's your question, Shelley, how you can work with that. But what we have here is we've got some things around the vices and the virtues of the types working together, but I want to go to this one, potential scripts. So what we do here, and this is once again, not just a script for a 3 in a relationship with a 7. This is a script for a 3 with this instinct and trifix in a relationship with a 7 with this trifix and instinct. And this is where we can practice building bridges between each other, and we can play with that. So for the 3 to say to the 7, I love your adventurous mind, and I also welcome every feeling that lives underneath the ideas. You never have to keep things upbeat for me. Yeah. So how's that for a bridge into inviting the 7? And if we go back here, we'll remind ourselves that this is a 7 with the trifix 792. So total positive outlook. And we've got a 368, which is 2 of the emotional realness type. So can you see how this is a very subtle bridge to invite the positive, triple positive outlook type to go, you're invited to bring some other stuff too, hey? You don't have to keep up the positive dance. And that builds the connection between both the needs in a very neutral way. If we look at one of the scripts, let's use the 4th one here in the 7 side, you do not have to manage every detail alone. Tell me one area where trusting me would bring relief, and let's practice handing that over together. So something about the way in which we can find invitations for each other. And these scripts are things that people can practice in a session, saying to each other, and then go, what are some of the other invitations you'd like to offer this partner? Yeah, so getting really practical in terms of some of the things that we offer in this report. What we then do is we talk about when things get rough, the lines of stress and the defense mechanisms and how that plays out. And we dive deeper into different aspects of the relationship. So you won't always deal with all of them, but some of them will be up in terms of what the couple want. So are we here because we want to talk about conflict or stuff in intimacy, family life and parenting? And you might be in a couple who's decided not to have kids. So then that would be less relevant to them. There's something around managing finances, practical challenges. And then there's how do we grow the relationship, both ourselves and together? How do we build that us space, given who we are together? What we have at the end of this report are couples exercises, and this is actually my favorite part, together with the scripts, because I think they're such beautiful practical coaching tools. So there's how do we reflect on our relationship dynamics, which people can use even if they don't have a coach, or the coach can help them work through this exercise together if that's useful. But then we've also got exercises around understanding somatically what it means to be in the other person's reality strategy. So it's an exercise that allows the three to get into body postures that helps them understand the seven's world, and helps the seven get into body postures that helps them understand the three's world. So without words, we're building compassion and connection between each other. So here we have Sally becoming Sam, and then talking about, this is what it felt like when I was in your body. And then reversing that exercise as well. So that's a very deep somatic practice that I love. We've got another practice around co-regulation, which of course you can turn into a micro habit. How do we regulate together even when the stakes aren't that high? So you can do co-regulation practices in your coaching sessions, like we did with the ear rubbing, and to help us then navigate so we can practice for when we get to the real high stakes stuff, to be more co-regulated together. And then there's another one that offers us, once again, some scripts to help us move to repair when there's been a rupture in the relationship. Specifically then saying, if one person tries to lead versus when we try to lead together, how can we deal with that? And it gives us a really nice picture of kind of seeing how all the 9 types for each person meets the other. And you can immediately see what's happening in this relationship. Sam is holding all the Enneagram 8 energy. So Sally's kind of, in a big way, handed over her Enneagram 8 energy to Sam, in the same way that Sam's handed over his Enneagram 7 energy over to Sally. And so that idea of how, and that's an interesting conversation I've often had with people, is to just ask the question, what does it mean for the other person to pick up all of that energy in the relationship? And often that's where there's a disillusionment or a sadness or a fatigue that comes from that. Like if I'm always having to be the one that starts and has the good ideas, that's fun for the first 3 years. But by the time we get to year 20, there might be an imbalance here. So that's, and then just one thing I want to say about the reports and just some of the ethos with which we've written it is these reports are written to be useful for all kinds of relationships. So they're not written with the heteronormative kind of template behind it. And so you'll see that even the language that we use here is we use neutral pronouns. So we use they or the first, second, I, you pronouns in the report as a way of it also encompassing a very broad variety of relationships. Because I think sometimes we can build relationships and reports like this and we go pink for the girl and blue for the guy. And, those norms are not helpful in 2025. And so some people may have different client groups that they work with, but it's important for us to be inclusive more broadly. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, thank you for that. And I really love the way you've shown the distribution of a type energy within the relationship. I used to see a Jungian analyst, and he used to talk about how we outsource parts of ourselves to the other person. So we project whole parts of ourselves onto somebody.
Yes.
It's our feelings, our intellect, our capability, whatever it is. So that picture really reflects that nicely. And I've seen that so much in couples. One person, effective planning adult like the 1 and the 3 and the other. Yeah, it just, that distribution is a genius piece of work as a relationship conversation starter.
Exactly. And one can think of each of the 9 types as energies. And we need all 9 energies for wholeness, right? So in our pursuit of wholeness in ourselves and in the relationship, how are we outsourcing? And that's an interesting conversation when we deeper it there. But I think the core thing for us in building this report was to offer people who work with colleagues or couples really practical ways to not just talk about the patterns, but to also have practical, pragmatic exercises to work with the patterns and to work with building healthy patterns in that way.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. That's so great. And just before we go, I want to share something that's really important for me in my work around the trauma-informed side of things.
Yes.
When we're appreciating that there are 4 people in the room, there's that wounded child, there's that wounded child, then there's their adult showing up with these coping strategies, with these defenses against the past, with their desperate ways of trying to get their childhood needs met. And when we're looking at the Enneagram, you know, we're talking about the lost childhood messages that are coming out in the relationship. And when we get triggered, it's because those lost childhood messages, that wound is happening again. And it's not necessarily objectively happening, but there's a special sensitivity that we have. So, for example, 6s have a particular sensitivity to safety. So they'll be much more easily triggered around safety issues. And their whole type is built to predict unsafety. So the Enneagram helps us to work with those and to really start understanding how we reenact our trauma in our relationships. So, for example,
Yes.
these kinds of patterns, if you look at this, and you're going to find some of them showing up more in different instincts and in different types, but to also be aware that some of the difficult patterns that are coming into relationships are coming from particular types of traumatization. And when you see these patterns, to know that there's deeper work about healing those wounds as they are in the here and now. That doesn't mean necessarily doing what Bessel van der Kolk speaks about as the archaeological dig. That's not the work. The work is, how do you be in the here and now, safely in relationship, so that you don't feel like a 2-year-old. You don't feel like a terrified 6-year-old. No, like you can think about relationship triggers, like someone walks out and slams the door. How old do you feel in that moment that somebody does that? Do you feel like a 4-year-old, a 6-year-old, a 2-year-old? Or do you feel like an adult who sees someone else is completely triggered and they're dysregulated and they did a thing, and being able to relate adult to adult? So working with the underlying childhood patterns that are given to us in the Enneagram, and understanding our adaptive strategy to deal with that pain. So for me, a lot of the Enneagram work is about building the ability in each person, and it starts with the individual, to self-regulate, to experience inner organization, to cultivate that inner witness, to be able to notice that person walked out and slammed the door and they've driven off. What's happening in my thoughts? What's happening in my heart? What's happening in my body? What happens when I'm triggered? And start being able to bring that soothing to my own nervous system to cope with my suffering. The Enneagram really, really helps us understand our core suffering. And the journey to healing is, how do I regulate my distress long enough that I don't have to enact the unhealthy side of my type as a coping strategy? So just bringing a bit more of that Enneagram individual lens into the healing of the individuals to be able to even show up as adults. Lucille?
Yeah. Just, I mean, there's a doorway into that we've built into the report, where we talk about rewounding dynamics and the potential for rewounding in the relationship, because there's such a beautiful compassion that emerges when we're able to realize how my everyday activities may be rewounding my partner in ways that I don't intend at all, and vice versa. And there's deep compassion that comes from that. And it's often a real healing in the relationship that can happen from there. So, yeah, it's very important what you raised there. And thanks for bringing that in and for the trauma-informed work that you do, Ingrid. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know you want to share a little bit about your courses. I'm very aware of the time and time boundaries. And so there's a couple of things you want to share. I've shared some stuff in the chat. We'll also share some slides afterwards, but try out what we've developed. There's an offer to do this for free. I've put the couples report sample in the chat as well if people want to look at it in their own time. Yeah.
When I'll create a Substack about the session, I'll put in the recording, there'll be slides and all the links will be there. I'll make sure that you all get that. And then just to highlight the fact that I've got a course starting in October, which is the 5D Trauma-Informed Coaching. It's an 11-month journey, so it's quite a big journey into a trauma-informed way of working with the Enneagram to bring about the state change. What does it mean to work with the Enneagram with someone in a way that is unshaming and leads them towards a different experience of being in their own skin? So that's really what it's about. It's about a transformation of a person's core sense of their own being in the world. And that's how it works. So if you're interested in that, just take a look at these slides when you see them. It's starting on the 22nd of October. So I wanted you to just be aware of that. Quite an in-depth journey. Some people do this course 4 times in a row because it's a holding community. And they're wonderful people who come on it, you wouldn't even believe. And then I've got a team dynamics facilitation training program, which is also trauma-informed. How to work with groups in a way that you aren't doing unsolicited and unrequested open heart surgery in front of their colleagues or shaming them or triggering their identity trauma. This one started yesterday, but there is an asynchronous option where you can watch the recordings and come for one-on-one sessions with me. So just to be aware when I send out the slides, if you're interested in these programs, then you can get hold of me. But all of Lucille's stuff in the chat, the report links, all of that will be there as well. So I'm going to stop the sharing there. And that brings us to the formal end of our time together. But I'm happy to stay for a few minutes, 15 minutes or so. Lucille, I don't know if you are any questions.
Yeah, sure.
And I won't switch off the recording, but if anybody wants to share, what are you taking away? What landed for you? Let's hear. Marie.
Let me unmute. It was great. I'm trying to find the right adjective and I can't, but I really enjoyed it. It was captivating. I am really keen to go and have a look at those reports, Lucille, and to see how we can use them. And I'm also interested in your courses, Ingrid. So I'm going to be contacting you as well. So thank you so much for the time. The learning was great. The whole dialogue around the instincts was amazing and so informative. So thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Does anyone have any questions for Lucille or for me or for each other? I can hear Björn playing the piano.
Yeah, sorry. There's piano practice that happens in the background, people. The really crazy music earlier wasn't some weird background commentary on relationship dynamics. It's just my son playing the piano.
But jazz is a great commentary on relationships.
It is, potentially. At least it wasn't ragtime today.
Yeah. let's hear from you. Krista, you do a lot of group work and work with women. What is landing for you?
I'm just sitting here thinking how lovely this is and how well it's been thought through and packaged, and I can just see how it can be used. That's all I can see, the possibilities of this really being so applicable and so lovely. So fantastic work. What a lovely initiative. And I'm so keen to work with it. So yeah, I'm just in awe. I love the conversation and the richness of the examples, and yeah, just sharing so abundantly. So thank you. I'm very, very keen and excited about this new leg that's developing. So love it, love it, love it. And love you, Lucille, love you, Ingrid, as always.
Thanks, Krista.
Thanks, Diane. I see you had to go. Yeah, good news. How was it for you?
For me, I don't have much to say, but the most important thing to say to both you, Ingrid and Lucille, is gratitude for me. I feel thankful for this evening, mainly because it sort of answers my need for logical explanations for my work, because I orient from there. So when I work with couples or work with teams, I'm finding this very useful because it's going to be easier for me to apply it. And when it makes sense to me, it makes it easier for me to influence others, whatever their orientation is, for it to make sense to them. Not necessarily from where I sit, but from where they sit in the larger scheme of dynamics, yeah. And I'm very much interested in the trauma-informed course. We'll talk about it later offline.
Yeah, it would be so great to have you on that course. But which part of the report, I'm curious, good news, when you were hearing about the report, like what was the application context that you were envisaging? Like, yes, this is logical, I can use it. Can you talk about that a bit?
It's more about saying, how do I put a picture that makes sense up front to actually navigate and orchestrate a conversation that will take either a couple or a team towards something to work with. So if you look at the sample reports, you sort of scale down on each side, and there's depth of bringing in the various elements, rather than just saying your type X and your type Y, therefore, But what is it that is the squad behind the type? That's how I would describe it. Because there's a squad behind the type that makes me unique and be that person that is like that. So when you bring the squad with, then it becomes easier.
I love that language. And just so you know, Goodman, just like it's a random fact, there are 266,000 versions of these reports.
You see?
The squad is coming to play. So exactly. I love that language.
Yeah. So
but most of the squad is invisible. You don't have to see it, but it feels like it's more personalized than just reading about your type. Yeah.
Exactly. I think for me, it's more like from a six-ish type of look at things, and also from an African perspective, using family constellations as a lens.
Yeah.
When I appear as I speak right now, I am speaking to you with
from the constellation.
From the constellation, the ancestry behind me. So in the end, when you understand that, it becomes easier to see the collective of the person in the one person, so to speak. So that's what
Beautiful. Thank you.
So even for teams, I don't think teams are very much into understanding the other person because of the task orientation that you find in corporate today. So many executives don't have time and they don't have the energy to look at the things that will make professional intimacy to come alive. And yet, without professional intimacy, you can't get the numbers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Not for long. You might have a lucky moment, but you won't be able to maintain them.
It's not sustainable, yes. So people get forced into certain ways of being, and those certain ways of being are not sustainable because their own personal needs are not taken care of in the relationships that they get into in the teams. So in order for me to be acceptable to the team, I have to lose myself, and that's not on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is it's like a cheat sheet of getting into being professionally intimate with my colleagues without doing the heavy lifting that would be required if all this data came in dribs and drabs and was not connected to each other.
Yeah.
So the motivation for teams is that I will take you through a process and I will take you on a journey that will give you the required professional intimacy for you to be able to deliver on the business side, so to speak, with the required trust and professional intimacy that will make that balance between the task and the relationships to be at equilibrium, so to speak. Yeah.
Beautifully put.
Come to mind for me, and I think this might be a thing, is to have the PAIRS report as part of the recruitment process. So when you've got the boss's tri-type and instinctual sequence, there's a new player, and you facilitate an onboarding conversation at the beginning where you say, these are the things in your dynamic, and these are the potential sticking points, and where you might misinterpret each other. And, if I'm thinking of like a 1 boss and a 5 direct report, but opposite. And, maybe the 5 social blind or something, and the 1 social dominant, to be able to mediate a conversation and to make explicit, like social 1, what really matters to you. The Enneagram says this, is it right? And that person to hear them talking about what matters to them, and where we pick obvious disjunctures, then to get on a good footing straight away.
Like relationship contracting at work from the get-go. I love that idea.
I was just going to say, because I always speak about, or rather facilitate, relationship goals. And I usually use the Enneagram as not the Enneagram, the Instagram as a sort of a way of explaining it. That when young people look at happy people on Instagram, they will say, wow, those are my relationship goals. I'm saying in the boardroom, you need to have real relationship goals. And this is it. This exactly what you're saying, Ingrid, is how you can get them to have those relationship goals up front, set, so that they are on a journey in the first performance period, which is a year.
Exactly.
And it's a way of saying, my people, please meet your people. Let's work well together. Let's work well together. See each other. Can we play together? Great, good. The 2 of us will do the work, but thank you for all your support.
Good.
Up front, you're a self-praise 1, 3, 5. I've got no 1, no 3, no 5, and I'm self-praise blind. I am going to drive you crazy. We need to have a strategy right up front, and some ideas. I need clear deadlines. You need feedback loops, and in the process, I'm sure your scripts are very tailored to that. So I'm imagining that in a corporate environment, you could offer this as a performance management tool as well.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
Do
totally.
this, and then you talk about the objectives, and
Yeah.
it would be an absolutely amazing offering as a coach.
Yeah. So that's where some of this was born for the collegial report, was actually working in an agile community where the scrum masters and product owners are constantly needing to regroup around new things, and like fast tracking product owner, scrum master contracting from the start so they can run their teams really well, and then using it in the same way between the product owner and the business owner. Because in agile, we don't have 6 months to kind of figure out how we're going to drive each other nuts.
Yes.
And then course correct. Like we've got a sprint and it's one, so we have to do it up front. And so that's where we saw that this pairing alignment is really powerful. And at the moment, you know, one of the places where it's being used is in a complex enablement structure in one of the banks, where the matrix, the two leads that kind of play together in the same arena need to find themselves, so they don't play through the arena of the people in the team that they both informing.
Yes,
So
yes.
all of that's very useful.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
I use the team type of interventions for forming, like agile
Yeah.
team, where you've got
Yes.
the head of IT and the head of credit card, and
Yeah.
they, you know, there's always antagonism between the products and the techies.
Yeah. Yeah.
To work around that, these very core relationships in a business, I can imagine how unbelievably potent that could be using these.
Yeah.
There's another thing that has just crossed my mind now, that in the South African and in fact the global context of prejudice, this is a very good way of actually liberating the usual suspects
Absolutely.
from being blamed for when conflict sets in. It's because
Yes.
she's a woman, she's emotional, or he's black, is this or that or the other. No.
Yes.
These are the dynamics that I play here, you know, and this is how we can get
Yeah.
professional intimacy to set in quicker. Yeah.
Very funny. Good news. The minute you said the usual suspects, I was thinking white men.
The reframe has been completed.
Yeah, in other words.
Good. Given time, the tables turn. Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. So I have to jump, dear people. So
Good. Same
it was
here.
lovely meeting you. Good news. Thanks so much for holding space, Ingrid.
Good. Same here. Bye, Lucille.
And
Bye.
I'll get this the Substack and everything together. I'm teaching tomorrow, but Friday I'll get it out.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Great.
I'll send you the slides from my side.
Yes.
Thanks. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Bye.
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 Hope you're happy with everything. It was lovely. Thanks so much, Ings.
Thank you so much.